Man, unmute myself. Hey, everybody. Hope everyone can hear me okay. Excuse me. I'm sorry for having the a short time, and I appreciate you guys letting me go first. As I told Kathy earlier, I have Fridays and Monday mornings to try to squeeze everything in back home, and it piles up. So, first, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I think it's the first time I've been to. I think you guys do the chili supper and a few other items. I've been to that a couple times. I've never spoken at it, but I was there when Nikki Galloway, I believe, was running for auditor the first time, or for her reelection. And you guys do a great job with that, and you guys have a good group of Democrats there in Boone County. So uh, I'll give you kind of a brief update, and then just kind of open the floor for questions, and we can kind of have a back and forth. That's always kind of what I enjoy, and I find that the people that I talk with like it better too, so they can ask the questions that they really want to have answered instead of just hearing me drone on. Because I am known to slip into a filibuster, just due to the fact that that's mostly what we end up doing in Jefferson City. Um, well, basically, this session has been a very unique session. We started off obviously going back in the midst of COVID and COVID-19, and trying to figure out how we were just going to navigate the daily process of doing government. Um, excuse me, how we were going to physically do the work and do committee hearings and do things on the floor and things like that. So it was pretty unsure. Obviously, you guys are well aware of what happened last year when all the COVID stuff started, and we went on a break a week before spring break, and we're expected to maybe come back the week after spring break, and that was like 7 or 8 weeks later. We ended up, just like everybody else, kind of shutting down everything, and we were able to come back and pass a budget and a few other items, and that was about it. So when we started this year, we had kind of a lot of catch up to do, and we also had to figure out, like I said, how we were going to navigate the day to day. But we have a really good group of senators this year in our caucus. We've always had a lot of committed Democrats in the Senate, but I'm was really excited going into this session about the group that was coming in, and I wish there were more. Obviously, but I have not been disappointed. This group has done a tremendous job at sticking together, holding their feet to the fire on issues, filibustering, excuse me, filibustering when needed, compromising when forced to, and they're just a good group of bright people that have just contributed day in and day out. I mean, we have 10 Democratic senators. I think you guys are probably well aware of that. 5 of them are in their first year. So when you look at the actual numbers of them having 24 and us having 10, and 5 of them being relatively inexperienced in the Senate, and two, well, I believe Senator Mosley is the only one this year that has not served at all in the legislature. The others came from the House, so they had kind of a general idea of how the Senate works. But I will tell you, as somebody who made that transition from the House to the Senate, it's a difficult one. You think that you know it all, and you think that you got it all figured out, and then you go over there, and it's just um, a lot different. I like to like I liken it to the House is kind of like a cafeteria, and the Senate's kind of like a living room or a dining room table, and you are you're more involved with your colleagues. You know everybody on a first name basis. You know a lot about them and their family and where they're from, versus the House with 163 members. You have sometimes you don't work with members at all, just because you're not on the same committees, you're not interested in the same issues, you don't sit next to them on the floor, and you just don't have the interaction, just because it's so vast. So we've done a good job, I believe, at building relationships across the aisle, trying to build relationships, obviously, within the caucus, because we have so many new members. And I really feel like we have been successful a lot this year on a lot of different issues. We were able to beat back a bill the other night that was onerous, in my opinion, to local health departments when it came to COVID-19 and mask mandates and businesses and things like that, and giving the local governments the ability to make decisions at their local level on how to best fight the pandemic. The Republican legislature didn't want to do that, which is pretty opposite of what they've always said their beliefs were. But I think you guys are pretty familiar with that in Columbia. One of the famous ones that really kind of kicked it off was the plastic bag stuff that I think you guys are well aware of. That was the first real time when I was down there that we saw the supermajority Republican legislature really try to reach into local government and tell them what to do. And I will tell you, man, after that, the hits just kept on coming, whether it was minimum wage in St. Louis City when they tried to raise it, and then the legislature turned that back. Now we're obviously in a fight over Medicaid expansion, which I'm sure a lot of you are really well aware of. Last week, the Missouri House decided not to fund Medicaid expansion in the budget coming out of, excuse me, coming out of the House. So now that the budget will transition over into the Senate, and we're going to work as hard as we can to try to put that back in and do everything we can to make sure that they abide by what the Missouri voters wanted and said they wanted, and now is written in the state constitution. So, we all take an oath to uphold the Constitution. With the Missouri voters putting Medicaid expansion in the Constitution, obviously, I believe, and I think hopefully majority of people in the Senate agree that we have to uphold the Constitution at this point, even if you don't like it, which they do or don't. So we'll see. I will also tell you this week I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and this week is spring break for them as well. So if you hear them yelling in the background, I've got them in the room playing, and they're watching probably too much iPad right now. But I figured it's a good sacrifice to be able to have this interaction with you guys. So if two little girls start running in here, that's what they are. They're okay. But anyways, we're excited about the group that we have. We're excited about hopefully expanding it in 2 years to see what redistricting looks like. That's obviously going to be another big fight that we have coming up, just due to the fact that they were unfortunately unable to undo Clean Missouri in 2018 that was passed overwhelmingly by the voters. So we are really back to where we started, so to speak, on the redistricting when it comes to the House and Senate in congressional redistricting. And we are now waiting for census numbers and the data that was collected throughout the last few years, to do the redistricting and really sit down and look at it for congressional redistricting. The House and Senate redistricting will be a bipartisan commission appointed by the governor. I will tell you, I highly believe that they will not come to a conclusion and agree on a map, which is normally what happens, and has happened, I believe, the last 2 times. And ultimately, the judges will probably draw the map. We're going to give it our best effort and try to come up with something that is fair, which is, I can tell you, even as a Democrat, all we've ever wanted. We never really wanted to gerrymander the map like I believe that they did in 2010. We just wanted a fair shake. We have way too many districts, in my opinion, that are lopsided, and I think that goes for Democrats and Republicans, honestly. And they have packed Democrats into districts, they have packed Republicans into districts, and it really makes it difficult to try to find middle ground in the legislature when we actually come to policy decisions, because people are more afraid of a primary, unfortunately, than they are of a general, which means it's not good for them politically to compromise. And it just creates for a lot of head bashing and just not a lot of reasonable decisions. I will say we have seen in the Senate a group of Republicans that have seemed to be more reasonable, that we can work with. Being from the western side of the state, we're obviously more exposed to what kind of goes on in Kansas. And Kansas years ago kind of started this three-party type system, which is like obviously the Democrats. Then you have these ultra conservative Republicans that I would argue aren't very reasonable people, and then you have moderate to Republicans to a little bit to the right that I feel like you can work with, and it's just a very fluid situation on what we agree on and what we don't agree on. But we have seen this kind of more reasonable Republican group take more of a lead this year than we have in the past. So, and unfortunately, with the numbers the way that they are, we have to kind of work with what we have there. But we're hopeful in the future in 22 and 24 that we'll be able to make some gains. I will say I was happy to after seeing the results of 2020. I was happy to keep the numbers that we had. We didn't obviously as Democrats have a good year statewide, and it was a difficult year, and we've got to work on trying to figure out how we can get some of these districts a little closer, and just try to make strides and set our aspirations more so in the long term, in trying instead of trying to get everything all at once. And I'm here to do that, and I'll be working hard like I did 2 years ago to try to pick up seats, and we'll do the best we can with what we have to work with. We're obviously always out fundraised and but we're never outworked. So it's just a matter of working hard, getting our message out there, which I believe is more of a message for the Missouri or the average Missourian, and also expose what they're doing. People need to know that they're not expanding Medicaid after the voters voted for it. People need to know that we don't get, medicinal marijuana done without it being an initiative petition. People need to know that the minimum wage doesn't get increased without that being an initiative petition. The legislature was never going to do those things. And there is a disconnect between the initiative petition process and candidates. And we've got to find a way to bridge that gap because they like our ideas, right? They'll vote for Josh Hawley and then go down and vote against right to work. So, we're trying to wrap our heads around how we go about bridging that gap and getting our message out to the state that our message is more for them, and what we believe in is more for them, and what they vote for is what we preach. So we're going to try to do that. With that, I will go ahead and open it up to any questions that you guys might have, and just kind of go from there. So I'll let you guys have the floor. Thank you. I believe you may be on mute.
Who's calling on folks?
I don't know.
I'll just go.
I will, but I'm not seeing anybody so far.
Okay. I've got my hand up and so does Herb, Catherine.
Okay.
Okay. Herb, do you want to go ahead?
You go ahead.
My question has to do with a lot of my friends are discouraged at this point, to put it bluntly, with what's going on in the legislature, and feel like we're calling and writing every day about something, especially voting rights and initiative petition process, and now Medicaid and local control. So my question is simply, does it make a difference to hear from constituents? What's the best way to contact? Is email adequate, or should we be calling? What can we do to be most effective?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a difference, especially for you guys in Boone County. I mean, I think obviously Senator Rowden, who is your senator, the district that he represents is very diverse, and he has to listen to you guys because even though, and as floor leader, that's an impactful thing for you, but you have to kind of hold his feet to the fire on a lot of these issues. And I think that phone calls and emails and all that stuff definitely penetrate over time, for sure. And with you guys being in the unique position of your senator being the floor leader, unfortunately being a Republican, I wish it was Judy Baker, but you know, it is what it is. He does have the unique ability to slow down legislation, not bring up legislation, things like that, and also has a district that I would consider a winnable district by a Democrat. That he does have to listen to your district. So, yeah, I definitely think that those things work for sure. But I also will say with the supermajority, um, sometimes with other districts it does fall on deaf ears. I do know that Senator Rowden, it does work, and he does pay attention to it.
Herb? Herb?
It would be nice if the Senate very minority was able to be identified with some initiatives and not just negations.
Mm-hmm.
You see some prospects for that in this session.
Yeah, I agree with you. I will tell you honestly, a lot of our initiatives were done, right? So you know, we raised the minimum wage statewide. We beat back right to work. You know, we got medicinal marijuana through through the initiative petition process. So I definitely think that there are initiatives that we have believed in and championed. The thing about it is that a lot of our bigger ones the state has done. But I agree with you. We definitely need to try to be more on the offensive than defense. The unfortunate situation is a lot of times we're just put in bad spots of having to be on the defensive. But yeah, I mean, in you know, I will say the last year and even this year have just been dominated by COVID. So everything has really taken a back burner to trying to figure out how to best fight the pandemic in regards to testing, in regards to getting the federal money out the door. I mean, heck, that's even a fight for us. I mean, we have Republicans that don't want to spend the money that the federal government has allotted for our state to fight the pandemic. And they're, you know, every time we put money into testing or put money into vaccination events, where we face amendments that say, okay, well, anything outside of that we can't spend, or we're going to send back, or whatever it might be. And so, you know, unemployment insurance, in my opinion, funding that, funding small businesses, maybe with small allotments, that's fighting the pandemic. You know, not just vaccinations, not just testing. You have people that are out of work. We just have seen this year, obviously, the Department of Labor messed up, I guess you would say, and told people to apply for unemployment insurance or unemployment checks, and they did. They sent them to them, and now they said, "Oh, we messed up. You have to send that money back." And so that money was gone and out the window pretty quickly. And so we're working to try to get that taken off the table so that they stop going after people that to no fault of their own received the checks and have spent the checks. And now we have situations their checks are being garnished, their tax refunds are being taken back. And so we're working on that right now. But I agree with you. I'd like to be more on the offensive than defensive, just in general. And we're going to have to figure out what the best messages are for that after we get through this pandemic, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I can tell you we're most focused on employment, getting people back to work after the pandemic, making sure small businesses aren't closing. And a lot of our effort is on that right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Alice has her hand up. Unmute, Alice.
So I have two questions, but I'll just start with one and maybe
Sure.
later. So how will the federal, the Biden proposal about voting rights help Missouri if we're able to pass it, of course?
Yeah, I will tell you, we're really counting on it. I mean, it would be huge for us. You know, you guys, as I stated before, you guys know the number. There's 24 of us. There's 10 of them. I mean, there's 24. I wish there were 24 of us. There's 24 of them, 10 of us. And there is a voter ID proposal coming down the track right now. It's not as onerous right now as what we saw in Georgia, the draconian measures that they took that you can't even bring a bottle of water to somebody standing in line, or a piece of pizza or whatever, which is absurd. But it's still not great the way it is right now. But what we need to have happen is that John Lewis Voting Rights Act, if that passes, our elections in August and November, since they would have federal elected officials or federal candidates on them, we'd have to follow their guidelines, and we wouldn't be subject to a lot of the onerous, jumping through hoops in order for certain people to go vote, which is exactly what they want to have happen. That would hopefully be taken off the table, and people can actually go vote freely and fairly as we should.
So John, you mentioned that the Senate has a lot of really horrible senators, but there's some that are more moderate.
Mhm.
How many of the 24 would you say are more moderate? And is
Well,
our Boone County representative kind of moderate?
I think he does. I think he does the best job that he can do on certain issues. He's not as moderate as I would like, but he is definitely somebody that I can approach and talk to and have a conversation with. Sometimes it doesn't go well. Sometimes it does. But I would say that most times he is somebody that is reasonable and that we can talk to. I have also told him and others. I have a weekly press conference on Thursdays. I believe that obviously there's 10 Democrats, and I believe there's about 20 to 22 total members in there that are willing to do good legislation that is reasonable. So depending on the issue, I think you have 10 Democrats and probably somewhere between 8 to 12 Republicans that you can compromise with and have a good conversation about policy on, depending on the issue.
So one last question. Does that mean we have a shot at Medicaid funding?
I think we do have a
Given
shot.
those, okay.
No, I do. I think we have a shot at putting it back in the Senate. It's just going to be a matter of ultimately someone will offer the amendment on the floor if in fact it's put back in committee. Ultimately, a member will put that back in on the floor to try to take Medicaid out, and we will have a moment where people are going to have to make a judgment call on what's more important, being politically advantageous or providing health care for people that the state of Missouri voted on and said should have it. But I'm not going to say that, no, it's never going to happen through the legislature, because I don't believe that. But I think it'll be a robust discussion, and I think we'll find out. I'm not ready to throw up the white flag and say it won't happen.
So basically keep up the pressure.
Yeah, I would definitely say keep up the pressure, and we'll be doing the same thing from our end. I was quoted in the press all weekend as trying to do the same thing, and kind of challenging them to say, look, there's either 8 reasonable Republicans that will join with Democrats to expand Medicaid like the voters intended, or we're going to be in a court. I don't believe there's any reason to really compromise on the issue, because the state voted for it. It's in the Constitution, and all they're doing is delaying the inevitable.
Great, thank you.
Other questions?
Mm-hmm.
I think Carl and Marie over there have something.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. I mean, you touched on it because you talked about preemption. Do you, and that's an issue on a national level and a state level and all the rest. But do you see that as more of an individual issue, or is that a philosophical position? And what's the strategy to deal with that kind of thing?
And you're talking about with them reaching into local governments.
Right, exactly, local control.
Yeah. I will tell you, it's unfortunate to say this, but I believe that there is a subsection of the Republican Party that under Trump, unfortunately, have moved towards this kind of authoritarian strongman position, and the whole Reagan era Republican of less government, more local control, lower taxes, all these things, preemption, like you said, is kind of out the window. They believe in that until they don't, right, so to speak. And it's really frustrating. We had this conversation. I actually inquired of a senator the other day that wanted to basically ban vaccine passports for transportation, right? Airplanes, trains, Ubers, taxi cabs, lifts, whatever. And I just hearken back to, you know, you guys are the ones that preach businesses should be able to do what it is that they, a free market. And if a business chooses to have a vaccine passport to allow people in, whether that be an airplane or a Walmart, that's their choice. And if you decide not to go to that place because they're requiring that, that's a choice. And for years, you guys have preached that. And now you're trying to circumvent a vaccine passport because it's politically feasible for you, because there's a subsection of the Republican Party that has been so hyperbolic politicized that there's just no rhyme or reason to it anymore. It's like I said, they believe in it when it's convenient, and then when it's not and becomes politically expedient for them, all of a sudden they don't believe in local government anymore. Now they feel like they have to go into it. So it's really it's really issue by issue, and but the Republican that I grew up knowing, in my personal opinion, for the most part, is in the minority of that party now. And the majority of that party has been almost radicalized to a degree over these last 4 years, and really since 2008 is when it began, when Barack Obama won. That they have really shifted more towards an authoritarian type policies, where they're okay until they're not, and when they're not, they're going to bring in the long arm of the government and try to flatten you and bully you and push you around until you do what they tell you. So I think there's a couple more there, Winifred.
Go ahead, Winifred. Have to there you go.
Turn it on again.
There you are.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'm thinking about the filibuster
Mhm.
in the Senate, in your Senate. In the past, that's been used pretty effectively by one of our own senators to just talk a bill to death and stop it.
Mhm.
Do you see, how do you look at that?
So I think you have to look at it issue by issue. There are definitely times, including times this year, where we have been able to filibuster a bill until it was laid over. Obviously, I mean, look, we did it yesterday on the appointment, as you guys are probably watching in Boone County, with Todd Graves being appointed to the University of Missouri Board of Curators. It's a Thursday, where we have Easter coming up on Sunday. People are wanting to go home, and we kept them there till about 3 o'clock or so, filibustering that appointment, because a lot of people in our caucus, and several in their caucus as well, don't believe that Todd Graves should be on the Board of Curators. So we've done it before. It's just a matter of if the issue. So there's obviously issues out there related to, as I don't need to tell you guys because you guys know, but guns is something that they will move the previous question on. Issues relating to choice are something that they will move the previous question on. And when they move the previous question, that ends debate. And when they do that, that's kind of the nuclear option in the Missouri State Senate. And then we have to respond in kind afterwards. And it just becomes a really untenable situation for everybody.
Hmm.
So it really is issue by issue. We've been successful to get them to lay bills over by filibustering, but we have to watch it on some of the other issues to a degree.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It is after 12:30. Do we have another question? Looks like Herb has one. Do you have time for that one, John?
Yeah, sure.
Rise of the radical right
Mhm.
associated with the Republican Party. It's a national phenomena with some themes that are across the country. But it also looks as if every traditionally Republican state or a divided state is different in some ways. What's wrong with Missouri that is distinctly Missourian in this particular situation?
In regards to the rise of the Republican
Of
Party,
the very hard to deal with radical right
Well,
elected officials.
yeah, I can tell you the thing that really has emboldened them, in my opinion, is they have been able to relate somehow, I don't know how, to blue collar working trades members, union members in some regards. They will vote against right to work, but they also like guns and they may be pro-life. And so they will vote for a Republican candidate and then vote for a Democrat idea, because I do believe that they believe in Democrat ideas. But for some reason, in these last 10 to 12 years, we have seen a lot of union members that will vote for Republican candidates, and I think that's the piece that has really hurt us in regards to getting candidates elected. We've got to figure out a way to bring them back into the fold, as well as making sure other groups in St. Louis and Kansas City in the minority community get to the polls. And when they get to the polls, they can actually vote, and not a provisional ballot, but a real ballot. And we've got to start building that big tent again, because they have had success with their kind of populist message of getting what I would consider a traditional Democrat to vote Republican. And that's what has emboldened them, in my opinion, is because with that group, just math equations, right, that gives them a bigger percentage, which allows them to continue to get reelected. I tell people all the time, when it comes to these bad ideas, everyone asks me all the time, well, why do they keep doing it? Why do they keep doing it? Well, they do it a lot of times because they don't lose elections. I mean, and it's truthful, and we work really hard to try to do that. But I've sat across the aisle from Republicans in the House and in the Senate that I think have made really terrible decisions, and I've told them, this is a really terrible decision for your district, for your constituents, for the state, and they'll look at me and they'll do it, and then you know what? By God, they'll be back next session. And so it hasn't affected them. Because they haven't seen their numbers go down. Quite the contrary, right? When I got in the House, we had there was a 4-vote difference in the House between to the supermajority. I believe 110 is supermajority, and we were like at 106. The Republicans were like at 106. Well, now they're in the mid teens, like 116, 117, 118, and I don't know, maybe it's me being a Democrat, but I think they've done some pretty bad policies over the last, 10, 11 years since I've been there. The Senate's gotten more Republican. So we legitimately are going to be fighting on two districts, mine included, to make sure that we don't go down to 8 in 22. So a lot of it has been emboldened because they make poor decisions and they do bad things that I think shouldn't get them reelected, and yet their numbers continue to grow, mostly because of the gerrymandered districts. So that's been kind of the rise, why the rise has happened here in Missouri, in my opinion. And I will say too, there is a disconnect. There's a disconnect between Missouri and what happens in DC as far as Democrats are concerned. I don't think a Missouri Democrat statewide. I think there's a disconnect between a Missouri Democrat and a DC sort of Democrat. What's kind of happened there, and I think that unfortunately, as their numbers have gone up in the state, we have become more and more flyover territory. So they haven't invested nationally into the state to get our message out, it's becoming more and more abundant that the road for the National Democratic Party is going through the South and not the Midwest. And they feel like they have a better chance at doing what they did, flipping Georgia, flipping a Carolina, flipping North Carolina, flipping Florida, then Arizona, the Southwest and the South, and then they do Missouri, Indiana, Arkansas, Tennessee, those states. So a lot of it's that too. And I'm sorry to drone on, but yeah, I have a lot of personal feelings on that as well. So, but I can take one more from Alice, and then I'm probably going to have to get going. I'll try to be quick.
This was about CARES funding. Last time around, public health got apparently 8% of the funding. The state health department director held a lot for him and his lab and whatever. And given the pandemic, we can't let that happen again. So I just thought you might address it. And part of that also has to do with preemption. We can't lose preemption, but
Yeah.
And couldn't that be tagged on at the end on some bills? Preemption still?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we were able to, like I said, we were able to beat back the thing the other night. There are still bills out there that could be used as vehicles. Senator Searpoy, who's from my neck of the woods, he's a little bit to the east of me, and he represents the Lee Summit area. He has a bill. There's several other bills out there, and I do believe that discussion's not over. So we'll try to do the best we can to either beat it or make it more palatable to where it's watered down to where it doesn't have a tremendously bad effect. I will say, as a Democrat and super minority in the Senate, our job, unfortunately, is to take catastrophes and turn them into small problems. Right, and hope to win in the next cycle. So, we that's kind of just our job. Unfortunately, we take tornadoes and turn them into rain showers.
And now you have Kip Kendrick to help you.
Yes, Kip is fantastic. I will tell you. I mean, Greg is a great senator, and he's going to be fantastic for my side of the state. And when he told me he was going to bring Kip over, I was over the moon because we all of our offices really work together between our staff and the senators. He's fantastic. I am super excited to have him. So, especially when it comes to the budget process, he is a whiz on that.
Right.
So, all right, guys, I think my kids are crying. So I will, I appreciate your time. I really do. And I hope to do this again soon. Thank you very much for putting me first. And yeah, keep calling them and keep emailing them and do your due diligence.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
John. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, we'll flip back to announcements now. Pam, you want to share your announcements?